U.S. formally exits Paris Pact aiming to curb climate change. 5 years ago, the United States helped forge a global treaty to fight the impacts of climate change. On November 4th, the U.S. formally left the Paris Agreement. Most of the countries in the world have committed to the Paris Agreement. It calls for them to report on their efforts to make changes to fight climate change. Climate change, or global warming, is the gradual warming of the temperatures of Earth. As temperatures rise, sea levels are also rising. Droughts are becoming more common in some regions, while other places are experiencing increased flooding. Some parts of the world may soon face dangerously high temperatures on a regular basis. The production of food could also be disrupted. U.S. President Donald Trump had long talks about leaving the agreement. His administration gave notice in 2017. The move further isolates the American government in the world, but has no immediate effect on international efforts to curb global warming. Still, the United Nations agency, the UN, that oversees the treaty, and France, the host of the 2015 Paris talks, joined 3 other countries to issue a statement. They expressed concern about the U.S. withdrawal. Rising temperatures could do a lot of harm. There is no greater responsibility than protecting our planet and people from the threat of climate change, the statement said. The science is clear that we must urgently scale up action and work together to reduce the impacts of global warming. The Paris Agreement provides the right framework for this, they said. We remain committed to working with all U.S. stakeholders and partners around the world to accelerate climate action. The statement said so. It also said they will work with the countries involved in the Paris Agreement. The next round of UN climate talks is set for Glasgow, Scotland in 2021. Now, 189 countries have approved the treaty. It aims to keep the increase in average temperature worldwide well below 2 degrees Celsius or 3.6 degrees Fahrenheit compared to pre-industrial levels. The industrial era began in the mid-1800s. Another 6 countries have signed, but not formally approved, the deal. Scientists say that any rise beyond 2 degrees Celsius could have a devastating effect on large parts of the world. It could raise sea levels, stir tropical storms, and worsen droughts and floods. The world has already warmed 1.2 degrees Celsius or 2.2 degrees Fahrenheit since pre-industrial time, so the efforts are really about preventing additional warming. U.S. and China make the most emissions. The Paris Plan allows countries to set their own targets for reducing greenhouse gases such as carbon dioxide and to increase those goals every few years. Natalie Mawald is a co-author of the UN reports on global warming. She is also a climate scientist at Cornell University in New York. She said having the U.S. leave is likely to hurt efforts to reduce carbon emissions, so it will increase the number of people who are put into life or death situations because of the effects of climate change, she said. This is clear from the science. In the agreement's only real requirement, nations have to accurately report on their efforts. The beauty of this system is that nobody can claim that they were bullied into some sort of plan, said Nigel Purvis, a former U.S. climate negotiator in the administrations of Presidents Bill Clinton and George W. Bush. They're not negotiated, they're accepted. The United States is the world's second biggest emitter after China of heat-trapping gases such as carbon dioxide. Its contribution to cutting emissions is seen as important, but it's not alone in the effort. In recent weeks, China, Japan, and South Korea have joined the EU, the European Union, and several other countries in setting national goals. They plan to stop pumping more greenhouse gases into the atmosphere that then can be removed from the air with trees and other methods. The EU includes 27 countries in Europe. Joe Biden won this year's election against President Trump. He said he favors signing the U.S. back up to the agreement. U.S. withdrawal garners criticism. White House spokesman Judd Deere said the plan limits economies. He said it has done nothing to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. If the U.S. remains outside the deal, it is likely that other countries will try to put tariffs on U.S. imports. That could pave the way for trade wars. A trade war happens when one country retaliates against another by putting restrictions on the country's imports. The EU is debating proposals known as the EU New Green Deal. This would include a so-called carbon border adjustment. The proposals are to prevent companies from dodging emissions-cutting efforts in the EU by manufacturing goods in places without strict measures. Germany, which now holds the EU's presidency, said it was important for Europe to lead now that the United States has left the deal. Also, German government spokesman Stefan Siebert said that U.S. states, cities, and businesses have pressed ahead with their own efforts. Mowald said she worries that with the U.S. out, China and other nations may decide they don't have to do as much to cut carbon pollution. China first agreed to curb emissions in an agreement with the United States when Barack Obama was president. In addition to criticism from abroad, environmental and public health groups in the United States criticized the withdrawal. The second article is titled, President Trump is right to get us out of the bad Paris Climate Accord. Senator Barrasso. Paris Agreement puts America at a competitive disadvantage, an opposing view. Written on November 6th of actually last year. President Donald Trump is keeping his word and getting America out of a bad deal. The poorly negotiated Paris Climate Accord imposed unfair, unworkable, and unrealistic targets on the United States for reducing carbon emissions. As the climate deal punished America's energy producers with expensive and burdensome regulations, it gave other countries U.S. taxpayer-funded subsidies and generous timelines. Countries like China got a free pass to pollute for over a decade. With abundant low-cost coal, China and India would put our manufacturers at a huge competitive disadvantage. Economic costs would be severe. According to the National Economic Research Associates, if we met all of our commitments as part of the Paris Climate Agreement, it would cost the American economy $3 trillion and 6.5 million industrial sector jobs by 2040. We don't need to cripple our economy to protect our environment. America's emissions actually continue to decline, and we are the world's driver of innovative solutions. Since 2005, the United States has reduced its combustion-related carbon dioxide emissions more than any other nation in the world. Global emissions have moved in the opposite direction. Our reduction in emissions was largely from new and innovative technologies from the private sector, not international agreements or punishing regulations. Groundbreaking research into carbon capture technologies and advanced near nuclear reactors hold the key to continued emissions reductions. American free market innovation can address a changing climate. We all want cleaner air, but the Paris Climate Agreement and the regulations that would come with it put America at a competitive disadvantage with the rest of the world. This was a bad deal, and the president was right to get us out of it. Senator Barrasso, representative from Wyoming, is the chairman of the Committee on Environment and Public Works and a member of the Committee on Foreign Relations.